Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I'm glad you're right here with me. My name is Tyler Herrera, and this is Hardcore Dropout. So today is a really special episode because I got to bring on a close friend from my childhood. His name is Michael Smith. He's got a background in audio engineering. He went to school for it. He also does a lot of photo and video work, but most importantly, he is an avid music listener. Him and I go all the way back to about 2005 or so in a small town at the very bottom of California, right near Arizona. And tucked away in that little corner, we got to see a lot of bands like Winds of Plague, Suicide Silence, A Life Once Lost. We had a really unique upbringing in that town. My brother and another friend of ours were booking a lot of shows and a lot of bands before they blew up. So him and I go way back and have a really great rapport and a lot of history at live shows together. So today, we decided to talk about backing tracks in live music. We talked about where we draw the line between too much, or is it a auxiliary piece and is it enhancing the experience? And at what point do we start to accept that maybe it's just necessary in the live experience? So this is a hot topic over the last couple years, dating back to, well, I guess it's always been a hot topic in music, but dating back to Ronnie Radke and, the whole laptop drama, and then Craig Reynolds last summer calling out some bands for using tracks over their kick drums, and there has just been a lot of discourse over it. So Michael and I felt like we had a long enough history going to live shows and his background in audio engineering. We felt like it was a topic worth discussion still. It's always going to be relevant in the music world, especially as technology advances and these things become more and more accessible for bands of all sizes. So it's a great conversation. I hope you'll stick around. The first 10 minutes are him and I just kind of giving some context and background about where we're from, which I think is important because, like I said, we saw a lot of bands before they blew up and we saw them before backing tracks were so easily accessible. So I think we have a good perspective on this stuff, and I hope you'll hang out with us, listen to the whole episode. But before that, bang your fucking head with me. Michael, welcome to Hardcore Dropout.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So just for some background and context for the listeners, what year do you think it was that we met?
I want to say no later than 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like it was one of those things where like we were kind of orbiting the same circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Probably going to shows in El Centro, and then I wish I remembered.
Planners even.
Yeah, Planners.
Yeah.
I wish I remembered the exact moment we met, but like that time period was just like so many people circulating the shows that like it's hard to remember pinpoint exact moments where you met people,
Yeah. I still talk about on a regular basis if I'm ever on Reddit and they're like, what's the coolest show, coolest time you saw a band before they blew up, right? And I'm always like, excuse me, I'm like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, I saw Winds of Plague in a hotel bar.
Yes.
Like, stuff like that. Job for a Cowboy's, like, first California show was in my hometown. Like, that kind of thing,
Dude, that's
that
true.
time.
That was their first California show.
Them and See You
Holy
Next Tuesday.
shit. Wow.
Yeah.
So that is all because of, obviously, my brother, Ryan.
Yeah.
So we grew up in a really unique and now, in hindsight, special situation where, like, so we're 2 hours southeast of San Diego, which had its own scene and, had some good venues, but it was still a trek for us. And then more importantly, we're 45 minutes, an hour from the Arizona border.
Yep.
And between Yuma, Arizona, and then our hometown of El Centro / Imperial, my brother and then Jeff are booking a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
And somehow pulling names that went on to be huge. Like we just mentioned some. So let's see. Winds of Plague.
Impending Doom.
Yeah, dude. And again, that was in the hotel bar, right?
Yep.
Yes. So
Yep.
Impending Doom, Molotov Solution, Job for a Cowboy, See You Next Tuesday, First Blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Jeff got Walls of Jericho, Suicide Silence, A Life Once Lost. As I Lay Dying played in Yuma.
Did they?
Yeah, that was early. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, Shadows or Security wasn't even out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I do remember there were a couple shows that I missed, but I still remember. The Faceless played in someone's backyard, and I don't remember if that was in El Centro or in Yuma. And then I was telling someone, this isn't quite our, around us, but I remember Norma Jean was going to play Mexicali, but their vocalist got sick, and so they had to skip that.
That's right.
Date.
Yeah. Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, we even got to see shows in Mexicali because, like, again, I won't make this a podcast about our hometown.
Right, yeah.
I think we both know it's a pretty unique place.
Yeah.
Small town, middle of nowhere, but we're also literally probably 15 minutes from the Mexico border.
Yeah.
So yeah, I saw Alsha Parish in Mexicali. I saw From a Second Story Window.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I saw my first boob in Mexicali, literally, and I only bring that up because it was at a Faceless show, and so I'm already losing my mind, right?
Right.
I'm like, this is crazy. I'm in another country. The Faceless sound nuts, and I kid you not, somewhere in the MySpace archives, there's a photo of me with the Faceless and my brother Hanaro, all of them, and someone showing their boob.
That's so funny.
Yep.
Oh, that's so funny. You know what? Gotta make it memorable.
Right? So, moral of the story is we had some times growing up.
We had some times, yeah.
We could go down the list, but
100%, yeah.
So I would say that time period was 2005 to probably 2009/10, around there, which is peak metalcore era. So you and I bonded over a lot of metalcore. That's for sure.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then obviously we both go off into the rest of the world, but I think something, very pertinent to the conversation we're going to have tonight is you went to audio school, right? Production.
Yeah. I went to school for audio engineering, and originally to learn how to just run a studio, mix, master, things like that. And then the curriculum was pretty comprehensive, so we also did live sound and live sound, running stage, running lights, recording front of house, that kind of thing. And honestly, if I'm being honest, man, it made me a snob, and I have no regrets about it.
As you should.
And there are once we get deeper in this conversation, I'll be mentioning a lot of bands that I'm critical of, even outside of live performances, but even some bands that I love and listen to on a regular basis. I'll think back and I'm like, man, I wish that one time that I'd seen them would have been better, and yeah. And 100%. not even just in terms of the performance aspect, but the pertinent to this conversation, but the over reliance on technology sometimes. Yeah.
100%. And so, we'll get to backing tracks in a second. Are you doing any audio stuff now?
Honestly, man, I'm not going to get into it. Things have shifted in a positive way in the last 2 to 3 months, and so there's I'm on the precipice of doing some audio stuff, but I'm mostly doing
awesome.
Photo and video.
Funny story. I mean, I can't help but bring up now I'm just indulging in personal stories a little bit. What about maybe it was 2 years ago, I'm watching camera stuff on YouTube and I'm looking at Prism effects lenses.
Yeah.
And then, mind you, we hadn't talked in years.
Yeah.
We had lost touch for a while. And then you pop up in a YouTube video talking about this little lens filter I wanted to buy. And I turned to my girlfriend at the time and I was like, there is no way on earth that's anyone but Michael Smith.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, that has to be him.
Also, for a little bit more context, in the time since, if you're watching this video, if you're seeing, because you're putting out a video, right?
Yeah, it'll be on YouTube too.
If you're watching this video and you're seeing what I look like now, I will tell you, the last time that we saw each other in person, I did not look a damn thing like this.
100%. You are grown now.
Yeah, I buzzed hair, no nose ring, no beard, maybe a mustache at most.
Damn,
so I'm surprised you recognized me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I knew immediately.
That's
so. But that's
which on the flip side, like I told you before, it took me at least a week of basically seeing your content and being like, wait, that's Tyler.
Yep. I mean, because I look at some photos of me, as a younger kid, like, and I'm like, I mean, I guess it looks like me, but like,
yeah, right.
But I think I've also grown a lot also, but
yeah.
Anyway, so you now doing a lot of photo video stuff, which you're living the dream, in many ways.
But we'll get there. But like, I will say, not only did the audio school like really change my perspective, but over the last like 5-6 years, once I've really started like digging my heels into the live photography thing, that also gave me a whole new perspective that I'll really touch on later. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, on that note, let's get into today's main topic, which is backing tracks.
Yeah.
Do we like them? Do we love them? Do we hate them? Are we on the fence? But so we both took some notes. I'm gonna give some background real quick because I took some notes on like the timeline of this in the scene, and I'm just gonna use the scene loosely as heavy music. So the first time that I guess we've always kind of known about lip syncing, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's been a thing since we were kids. But the first time that I saw it really become a hot topic in the scene was about 2 years ago. Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse,
made
that tweet.
Stand-up guy, love him.
Right, phenomenal guy.
Yeah,
great job, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Everything, yeah. So Ronnie tweets like he loves to do about them canceling some shows, like he loves to do. Yeah, and it was because their tour bus had gotten broken into, all their laptops got stolen.
Right.
And so immediately people were, pretty upset because they were like, what do you mean you can't play a show without laptops?
Right.
But I think that moment is important because people, I think, did conflate laptops immediately meaning backing tracks. But now probably 90 to 99% of bands can't play without laptops because of like light shows, metronomes.
Yeah.
Like, it's part of the show, It doesn't necessarily mean backing tracks, but so that happens 2 years ago, and then I think more recently, about a year ago, Craig from Straight from the Path.
Yep.
That's when he called out drummers using actual backing tracks over their kick drum, which is insane. So were you tapped into that at all?
The kick drum one, yeah, I saw that, and I had all my thoughts, and if I wanted to brave Twitter, I would have tweeted about it. And it's like, cause once he got past the, like, and I don't mean this in like a derogatory way, but like once he got past like the rage bait side of just putting out the statement with no nuance, and he started, and he mentioned the like playing a stadium, right? Playing an arena. Sure. Cool, that's fine. Like if I'm going to see, and especially a band and a musician in the scene, it's that whole thing's predicated on the idea of authenticity, right?
Yes.
And so like in an arena, in a stadium, I kind of get it. At that large a stage, you do want nothing to go wrong,
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I understand. I don't necessarily agree, and but I've seen some people. I've seen some like international acts play 200 cap rooms, and the whole time I'm like, "You playing that?" Like
100%, yeah.
And like, because I remember like going back to like the time period that we were kind of growing up in with this music. I remember a lot of people talking about like an over reliance on Pro Tools and digital tools in the in the recording side of it, right?
Yeah.
And like and once I went through my schooling, it's like, no, there are things that you need, right?
Yeah.
There are things that you need in terms of like pitch correction for one of them, right?
Yeah.
Everybody uses pitch correction. Every single singer of ever uses pitch correction, right?
Oh, I believe it.
To what degree? Sure, you can go from I'm not even really gonna say like T-Pain used it as an effect, but like Kanye on 808s, right? That dude can't sing. By his own admission, he can't sing. So he auto-tuned it to make it sound like he could sing. So you go from there, and then you have the Adele's like fantastic voice, can probably shatter a glass with a high note kind of thing. Still uses pitch correction as just like a just a little tweak, right?
Yeah.
And so with the drum, going back to the drummer conversation, I've seen for 15, 20 years, however long, I've seen drummers use triggers, right? Yeah. Just especially in like death metal, right? Just to keep everything even, right? Mm-hmm. Like that. But they're still playing. The backing tracks is what triggers me, right? Yeah. Like, cause it's like, you're not keeping, you've essentially, we have this unspoken, as audience, from audience to like musician, we have this unspoken handshake, and it feels kind of like you're betraying it,
That is the perfect way to put it. Yeah, it's like you are going to a live show expecting a live show, right?
Yeah.
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 And so, you touched on a lot of things there as far as like there's so much nuance to this conversation as far as like at what point are you using technology to enhance versus to experiment, like you mentioned T-Pain, like he has used it as a tool to experiment, with sound, but for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about live music because I think for the music that we're into, hardcore, metalcore, emo, post-hardcore, all that, it is these are live music genres, right?
Yep.
Technology's now become way more available, so it is cool that a lot of these bands are getting to tap into that. But so where do you draw the line live?
I draw the line live if I draw the line live if it makes me question whether or not you're actually doing the performance, right?
Yeah.
And that's like I guess that's like, I'll still be critical in other ones, but that's like the big one, right? Mm-hmm. Like there have been a few bands, like I said, big international acts where I've just walked out. I've just been like, you know what? I'm good. I don't think you're doing, someone in the band is not doing what we've agreed upon, right?
Yeah.
And I've just left, or stopped paying attention, whatever, because it's like, because I've seen some. So with that said, that's the furthest example. And if I want to get a little softer and with a little nuance, it's like if you like a backing track should be support, it should enhance, right?
Yes.
And not replace. Enhance the experience, not replace the experience, essentially. I think that's the hard rule that I'm willing to say on tape.
100%. And I think I watched a video the other day, Rick Beato. Yeah. So obviously more years producing than I have been alive. You know what I mean? So obviously has some opinions on it. And he talked about backing tracks have been around for as long as he can remember. Yeah. But they were used as a supplementary tool. Mm-hmm. And the example he gave was like Train, that Drops of Jupiter song.
Right.
He said when I think he worked on that project or that album or whatever, they asked for backing tracks live for the symphony that's on that track.
Right.
Because they can't tour. They can't tour with a symphony.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's just not practical for one song, So like,
yeah.
So I think when it's supplementary like that, it makes sense,
Like, because one of the things that I like, I'll just go straight into examples, positive examples, is like two of my favorite bands of all time are the Deer Hunter. They're not metal related, but the Deer Hunter and Maps and Atlases, right? And they're two, for the sakes of this conversation, these are perfect examples. In around 2009, 2010, Maps and Atlases, if you're listeners, if you're not familiar, they're very noodly, very like they're math rock, right? Like when I hear the words math rock, I think Maps and Atlases.
Same.
And they released an album called I'm not going to think of it.
What does the cover look like?
I think it's Perch Patchwork. I think that's the name of the album. It's got like a coastline.
Yep, Perch Patchwork,
Yeah.
2010.
And so they released an album. It was their first full-length album that they released called Perch Patchwork. And that album was... Because before, they were a 4-piece band, 2 guitarists, a guitarist who also sang, bass player, and a drummer, right? And Perch Patchwork had strings on it, it had keys on it, had some horns on it, right? And so I went and saw them in San Francisco, I believe at Bottom of the Hill, I think. And I was like, wow, how are they going to do this? Are they going to backing track? Are they going to samples, triggers, what? Keyboards? None of it. They just didn't. They just played the song because they had written and arranged these songs to be played bare bones, not necessarily unplugged because, they still had everything plugged into amps and everything. And it blew my mind, right? Because I did not feel like I was missing out on anything because they were more than technically proficient. The songs were still there and still recognizable because they were written in such a way that the extra seasonings weren't necessary for the composition. And then a few weeks later, I saw the Deer Hunter, and the Deer Hunter again, they're one of those bands that has a lot of strings, a lot of just orchestration to their music, and that's just like their sound. Mm-hmm. And every time I've seen them, they have, and it's gotten more complicated as time has gone on, but almost every thing that's on the album is played live in some way, shape, or form. At least 2 people, like their lead singer, who also plays guitar, also has a keyboard in front of him. I think one of their other guitarists or their bass player, or someone I was getting confused because I haven't seen them in a long time, also has a keyboard in front of them, and they're playing pads, they're playing strings, they're playing whatever, and making it, live, right?
Yeah.
And those are 2 like extreme examples. I mean, there's if you want to get back to metal and hardcore, there's also the Chariot, and they're a whole other story. But but like when it comes to that, like the Deer Hunter and the Maps and Atlases, they figured out a way to do it live. And they don't sound anything like they do on CD, and that's fine, right? Yeah, like if I want to listen to the CD, I will stay home and I'll listen to the CD. I am saying CD like an old person.
Oh my God, I'm so normalized to that. I didn't even realize it, but you're totally fucking right. Yep.
If I want to listen to the 8-track, I'll just pop it in. So with that, like my old man yelling at the clouds examples out of the way, like when it comes to backing tracks, I'm going with the Rick Beato like philosophy of saying like it's meant to enhance. If it's something you can't do live, sure, cool, that's
Absolutely.
fine.
Yeah.
Like if it's a big enough feature of a song, like you can't tour everywhere with a giant orchestra, play that. Yeah. If not everybody in your band can sing or at least hit your registers, have it on the backing tracks, have the harmonies on the backing tracks, that kind of thing,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I am in a very similar boat. So I am pro backing track, anti-spectacle.
Right. Yeah.
So for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about rock music. So all the things that constitute rock music, guitars, bass, drums, vocals, those are live. Those are live instruments.
Yeah.
So if I'm paying to see a band live, I want to see those instruments played.
Yep.
And anything in between that needs to be supplementary.
Right.
I don't mind if it's on backing tracks because that might be the song that I fell in love with anyways, has those, those little nuances to it.
Yeah.
But, we've been talking privately a little bit about this. I saw Thrice and Manchester Orchestra, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to use the Thrice set as an example because they played Beggars, and basically I'm going to repeat what you just said about Maps and Atlases, but Thrice's version is just in the hype and the lead up to the show. I was watching Thrice content, watching old music videos and stuff, and I found they've been doing like their own kind of podcast series revisiting these albums. And in talking about Beggars, they said the theme for the album was that they didn't want to record anything that they couldn't pull off live.
Ooh, that's good.
You know? So
Yeah.
as I'm watching all of it being played live, they played straight through, maybe 2 quick pauses.
Wow.
It was really impressive. There were multiple times that I had chills on my back
Yep.
because they added in maybe like, there was one point where I was like, I think they just added like 2 extra measures of a really big buildup.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like, there was feedback on the guitars, and you could tell they were leaning into being live, just like they had intended for that album to be. And so I walked away from that show thinking like, wow, I'm going to remember that show forever.
Yep.
And I don't know if that would have been the same if it was flawless and there weren't those extra little nuances. You know what I mean? And so that really solidified my feeling of like, if I'm going to rock, and that's a very broad term, you know, if I am going to a rock show, I want to hear live instruments.
Yeah.
You know? So, but then I got a curveball for you.
Uh-oh.
Is I started
I might have a few too.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So we've gotten it out of the way, how we feel about these. We're pro backing track for the sake of enhancing.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking about what we touched on briefly with the stadium bands. I was like, maybe if I'm going to see, I don't know, what would be a stadium band that I would see? Shit. I'll use Metallica for this.
Okay. Yeah.
I am not a Metallica fan.
Right.
Like, everything I've heard from them, I get it. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I've listened through a lot of it, but I say I'm not a fan because Metallica fans are diehard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
like,
I do.
I'm not a diehard Metallica fan, you know, but I would love to go see them,
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
you know, and like,
Yeah.
I want to see them play, but at the same time, dude, they're playing like football arenas. I don't know, and maybe you can chime in on this. I don't know how much of that has to be somewhat synthesized versus live, you know? So you want to dive deeper on that?
No, because I don't want Metallica fans knocking down my door.
Okay, we'll use. Oh, I got a good one for you.
Oh,
Oh, man,
uh-huh.
this isn't going to be much better.
Yeah.
But I did start thinking about Bring Me the Horizon.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder what level they're at in terms of like how dense their production has to be live. You know, so
I think like, because yeah, when you get to a point like that, you do have to, like, okay, let me put a pin in this real quick and talk about marketing for a second.
okay,
There's a big thing happening in marketing right now where, because also kind of unprecedented, you have 2 generations that are on the internet at the same time with almost completely opposing views on things, right?
Yeah.
And so just for this example, you've got millennials, right?
Yeah.
And like you and I both are on the younger, or on the kind of the tail end of millennials.
Yeah.
And then you've got Gen Z and millennials, and how we market, and how we like things marketed to us is like the genuine experience, right?
Yeah.
We have quote unquote been lied to a lot as we grew up by a lot of things, and especially in the rock sphere and the metal sphere and things like that.
Yeah.
We want the genuine experience. Gen Z likes the vibe, right? Like that's the and like I love the vibe too. And it's like, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen that meme. It's like how a millennial posts that they're at a concert and versus how a Gen Z posts that they're at a concert. And like, you know, I would be like, yeah, look at this. It's a 0.5 picture of the whole stage, see the whole thing, and I'd be like, I'm seeing Sabrina Carpenter today, right?
Yeah.
And then a Gen Z who could probably be 2 seats from me would like zoom in as crystal clear, probably take a picture of, you know, basically like have the details and just get the vibe across and be like espresso, and that's it, right? And like that's cool, right? Both things are valid. And so I think when it comes to a lot of these larger bands that are up there, they want to get that vibe across, right? And especially for their younger fans and things like that. And so they will keep the just as much production as they can and have the experience be a vibe more than the genuine thing, right?
Yeah.
Because also, like, personally, once, because this is a whole other topic, but like once, people are always like, well, why don't you like this? Why don't you like this band as they get bigger and bigger?
Yeah.
And the simple answer is because that rawness is kind of expected to go away, you know? Like, I'm not throwing shade. Sorry, not Loose fans. But like, I remember I on their most recent tour, I'd seen people that I'd seen pictures of it and it looked fantastic, right? Mm-hmm. But it was still crazy to me to see like pyrotechnics and these big like on stage massive like
props.
Light displays, and props and things, and it's like I've never seen Knocked Loose. They're on my list, but like I imagine them playing 100 200 cap rooms. That's what they sound like, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so like with them, it's they're a special case, but like as you get bigger, you'd think you kind of expect the original ingredients to kind of dilute themselves, right? Mm-hmm. I think I got off topic. What was the original question? No.
Was just yeah, I mean, like, how do we feel about, at what point are you like, I get it, it has to be done?
Yeah. I think, once you're playing a stadium, once you're playing like an auditorium or something that's a couple thousand, that's, I think, like, basically the larger you get and the bigger space that you're actually playing, the more I accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I have, I'm probably going to mention Under Oath every conversation.
Me too. Yeah.
You know that.
Yours is Under Oath. Mine is The Chariot. We're going to.
Yeah. We're going to ride those till we die.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Since Under Oath has made this, like, I was thinking about it, it's been like 10 years since they kind of had their revival tour, the Rebirth tour. That was in 2016, but I would argue they've gotten even bigger since then. Like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
because they came back on a Rebirth tour playing old albums, so like the core fans were there. But now they've put out some music, so they've grabbed the attention of some more people. Have discovered the early albums, like,
right.
But so they're playing. I'm a total fucking nerd. I do this with every band I like.
Right.
I check capacities of venues.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like using it as a gauge for like how big is this show gonna feel.
I won't mention any names, but I there is a specific venue in my area that I have the basically the top down blueprint layout of that I use as an example of why this venue sucks.
Love that, dude.
So I understand.
I have got some feelings about venues in the past couple years. Now it's just an old head where I'm like, all right, I can't just go to a shitty venue anymore.
Yep.
Like, there's got to be some requirements. But anyways, Under Oath is playing like 2,000 cap venues, which is like pretty awesome. And like that to me at that point is like this. That is when I think you can begin to call it a concert, right?
Yeah. The joke is the difference between a show and a concert is if I'm paying $10 for a drink or $25 for a drink.
Facts, straight up. Yeah. And let me tell you, I've paid a lot of money at some Under Oath shows in the past couple of years, unfortunately. So, But so that's where I start to welcome the idea of like, you know what, this is a big show. There is probably some production stuff,
right, that
is probably necessary, or else I might not totally have the experience that I should.
Right.
So that's where that is. Capacity wise, that is about the size that I'm like, all right, I get it. You're at a bigger production.
Right.
Your albums probably have more production that you want to replicate.
Right.
But that still comes back to like, you're just enhancing.
Yeah.
Versus.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
You had an experience, I don't know when, maybe within the last few years at a small venue where you were pretty certain one of these bands was on pure backing tracks.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
How'd that go?
That one was wild, and especially because, like, there was in all of my experiences with this kind of thing, it's crazy because I've never seen a full tour be done this way. It's always one band, one or a couple bands that is relying too much on the backing tracks, and then one or two bands that's just like doing it live, right?
Yeah.
And so this was a tour that even at the time, especially at the time, but even now, I'm still amazed was in the venue it was in. Like, listeners, I'm 6'4", and I was
you're
in
a tall
this
motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I was in this venue. Every time I go to this venue, I love this place. I essentially have to like tilt my head a little bit to kind of just kind of fit comfortably, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the openers, two of the openers, crazy enough, the one opener, or the first opener, sounded like they had the good mix of genuine article and necessary production, right? Because like their whole thing was kind of like this is probably a dumb, like, if you know who I'm talking about, this is probably not the best way to describe them, but they were like essentially like, what if Michael Jackson was metal, right? and they like, at no point was I doubting the validity of their playing, of their singing, anything, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. It was the second band that came up and they're a band that's been established for years. They've been around since, maybe not since I was in high school, but they've been around, right? And so they were playing like multiple times. I was like, are you singing that? Are you playing that? You know?
Yeah.
Like literally to the point where I'm like, oh, it's like the drummer's playing and the vocalist is vocaling, but I don't think the drummer, when he sang any parts, was actually playing, and I don't know if the guitarists were actually guitaring, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another thing about that was that the first two bands were playing from essentially amp modelers into the front of the house, which is a whole other conversation I'll have another day. And so like, but then the headliner came up and they had their cabs in the, like, basically the electrical room right behind like right behind the stage, right?
Yeah.
And so they weren't on stage, but they were mic'd up.
Yeah.
You know? And so you could hear it. You could hear just the, like, amp modelers have gotten so good in the last, not just 10 years, like 5 years, right?
100%.
Like, and so they, you know, but it's like, but you can still feel it, you know? Kind of like Impossible Meat is good. Impossible Meat is great, but at no point am I going to be like Impossible Meat,
man.
you know?
Yep.
Like
Great analogy.
Thank you. But yeah, I could feel the just the air move. Like, it was so loud and it was so good because it was like you could feel what would be lacking otherwise in this tiny room. Even though the cabs weren't in the same space as us, they were still mic'd up, and you could feel, especially where I because I was taking pictures and where I was shooting, I could essentially, like, every time I think back on that show, I imagine the wall like flexing, like a cartoon, you know?
100%. Yeah, the sound waves hitting it, like, yeah. But so
Yeah.
you knew it was live.
Oh, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Versus like, go ahead.
Oh no, nothing. Go ahead.
So when I hear that story, what I think of is, are you familiar with suspension of disbelief in films?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, pretty, you know, I guess like entry level concept in filmmaking. But for anyone who doesn't know, it's just that when you're watching a movie, everything in it, the lighting, the setting, you know, how they place props in the scene, it's all made to suspend your disbelief, so you fall fully into the movie. And we've all seen a movie where it's like you see a bad actor or a bad line,
right,
and it takes you out. You're like, fuck,
right.
I can't watch this anymore. Like, this is dumb, you know?
Yeah. And it also fits. It also has to fit with what has been established, you know? Because it's like, if I can go watch, you know, like a Marvel movie or something, and, you know, Captain America is holding a helicopter with a building by his bare hands, and I'm like, okay, that's
you're
Captain
like,
America,
that's awesome.
right? Yeah, exactly, that's cool. But like if I go watch like some Oscar bait and Kate Blanchett does that, well, in that specific example, I would be super hyped. But
I was gonna say, I feel like you like Kate Blanchett.
I love her, yeah. But you know what I'm saying? It's like there's different stages of credulity that can be, you know, how far it can be stretched. And, you know, like with for example, like, like, and I wish I could go, but I've been watching videos of the Joy of Motion Animals as Leaders 10-year tour that they're on right now, right?
Which
And like,
I'm gonna pause you real quick.
okay,
That album fucking slaps.
dude, right?
Yeah.
Dude, like,
Because you're the one that told me, like, hey, maybe revisit it, and
Yeah.
phenomenal album. But yeah, so they're touring for it right now.
Yeah. So they're touring for it right now, and like I've been watching videos of it because it's kind of like, oh, I wish I could,
Yeah.
and like they have backing tracks for stuff. Like there are certain passages that are probably like affected certain ways, like intros to songs that they're just like, yeah, we'll let a backing track play this, and then the song kicks in, and Tosin, Javier, and Matt are 100% playing that shit, and there's no doubt about it. And like honestly, warts and all, I've seen that band 5 times in the last 15 years, I think. And like, admittedly, like there's one song of theirs off their first album called On Impulse, and
Okay.
I don't think they play it much anymore, but they used to play it pretty heavily in like the first half of their career, I guess. And honestly, I would always complain that every time I saw them, 'cause that's one of my favorite songs of theirs of all time, every time I saw them, they would mess up my favorite passage, right? And there are a lot of caveats to that. Animals as Leaders, I love you. Please don't. if somehow you're listening to this, don't ban me from your shows, please. But I would never hold it against them. A, because everything else was flawless, and B, it was just part of the thing,
Yeah.
Like it was part of the experience. And so with the Joy of Motion, like there are songs where I can like they sample boop, and the sample plays, and then they kick in, and it's cool. My suspension of disbelief is not challenged, right? Like
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like I know what I signed up for, and especially for them, like they are, masters of their crafts, and we're getting that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because on the opposite end of the spectrum, I saw a band that is very big right now, the biggest band in, I guess, metalcore rock. Like they headline Mayhem. Does that give you any hints? Their lead singer is like, everybody wants him on the internet. Look, I'm going to say it because nothing. They are so big that nothing I say on this podcast is going to hurt them at all. But Bad Omens.
Oh yeah, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I saw them back in 2022. The Death of Peace of Mind came out that night. So I'm right on the tip of their ascent to just like superstardom, But they're opening for Under Oath, which is crazy to think of now.
Right. Yeah.
But I was really excited to see Bad Omens because I had heard a couple songs. I was like, oh, I want to know what this is about.
Right.
Pretty much their whole set, I was like, okay, I think Noah's singing, but that's the problem is I think, versus Spencer and Aaron get on stage. I know they're singing because they don't sound perfect. Sometimes
they don't sound perfect.
Sometimes you can hear Aaron's out of breath because he's playing the fucking drums.
Yep.
And and so that's where just like it does kill me when there's even the slightest bit of like synthesis there. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, like I still root for Bad Omens because I think it is good for heavy music as a whole. I just hope when I see them, I'm getting the actual experience.
Yeah, and like, excuse me. And like they, like, how do I explain this? Like, okay, let me big asterisk here. Writing music of any kind is difficult. I'm going to get that out of the way.
Thank you. More people need to preface their takes with that.
Yeah. Like I understand that whether you're John Petrucci or someone who's not John Petrucci, like your music takes work, right?
Yes.
And I understand that, and I'm proud of you for putting it out there, all of that. But with that said, you are putting it out there to be critiqued and received in one way or another, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so when I go see someone where the draw is not just the music, but also the musicianship, right? I am exceptionally judgy for how, like, what you're playing, right?
Yeah.
And making sure that like I'm not getting there, I'm not seeing this because you did this in the studio. I want to, and it just kind of goes for everything. It's like, you did this in the studio. I want to see you do this, right?
Yes.
But then there's a little bit of leeway for people that aren't basically inventing like new ways to play your instrument, like, and so it's like, I'm not big into Bad Omens. They were one of the first bands that I heard where I'm like, you know what, maybe I am getting a little too old for this.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, you saw that video on When We Were Young where Silverstein played a basement, right?
Dude, that was like, I think you sent it to me.
Yeah, I think maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like every time I've seen a band that has grown beyond that do something like that, they're almost every time they're like, man, we've missed this, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if part of that comes from because you never know. We can say like, oh, this is the musician's fault for all these backing tracks. Oh, it might be the label, might be someone higher up, just like, look, you guys got to sound, as and it's like, a lot of these bands that's where they start, start in a garage, they start in a practice space, they start playing for 3 people that don't care who they are, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like I do wonder if bands are like missing that,
Yeah.
like if there's parts of them that are just like, yeah, I wish we could still do this raw, still do this live,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would venture to say yes, and I will also say this is a good time to, point out hardcore right now, like very pure hardcore, the scene is the strongest it's ever been, and so a couple weeks ago I saw Tsunami. They're, I would say probably top 5 hardcore band right now if we're just talking about if we're just talking about popularity,
right?
Like a lot of Gen Z popularity, but 1,000 cap venue, and it went off. It was great, but literally all that's up there is like a Mesa Boogie.
Yep.
You know what I mean? A Mesa Boogie, an Ampeg, and like a 4-piece drum set, and their singer.
Yeah.
And it goes off.
Yeah, it does.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so like that's where I'm like, there will always be room for a raw ass live show where the amps are just turned the fuck up. You know what I mean? And like the only thing that's mic'd is basically the drum set. Like,
and if that, it's like an SM57 like in the kick.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah,
and it's like, and still the show goes nuts. And so there's there's a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah. Kind of going back to we brought up Ronnie Radke, right, and Falling in Reverse, and how canceled the tour because laptops got stolen, right?
Yeah.
This is as much sympathy as I'm going to give that guy. Like, I get it, because like there was in the local scene around here, there was a kind of a shift that happened I want to say in March, because in February a lot of smaller bands, not even smaller, but just local Northern California, Stockton, Sacramento, 20916 bands, all played this festival that was not managed well. That's all I'm really going to say about it. Yeah. And then like the next time I saw a lot of these bands around here, they all had like backline rigs, that either they're essentially so they could control their own sound. Because it's like, yeah, you do, as an artist of any kind, you do want your output at all stages to be controlled, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be at the mercy of, like an overworked sound guy who is on his like 3rd gig of the night and is just like, whatever, I don't care about these guys, and like, and again, I'm sorry, sound folks. I'm with you. I understand. Like, I've been on both sides of the stage. I'm sorry, but you know, like, and so it's like you get up on stage and you have your stuff dialed in. Boom, plug, play. Hopefully, it comes out. This, you know, there's less guessing game, right?
Yeah.
But like there are bands that do that, but also have the live, like the amps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not a very serious guitar player, but I swear I'm such an amp snob. Like if like the more like if a band sets up and they have, and I see them pull out cabs, and I'm already like, thank you, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And like kind of bridging the gap, I was watching I think the Garza podcast, and he was talking about, I think it actually might have been Mayhem, and he was talking about how during Suicide Silence's set, the production coordinators,
they like cut their set or something.
they cut their set, yeah,
Yeah.
and then Garza, I'm not a huge Suicide Silence fan, but he was talking, so I don't know who's who, but Garza was talking about how like they kept playing because they still had mic'd up amps, right? Like, he was like, yeah, they were probably thinking, oh, if we shut off like front of house or whatever, you know, then they're done. They're, you know, but it's like, well, there's still sound, there's still air being pushed out of these physical things that are on stage, right? And just that alone, and it's one of those things, kind of going back to the filmmaking, there's so many little details in filmmaking that you don't see but you feel, and having just the full genuine sound of an amp or just anything, you feel it, and sometimes, you know, whether you notice it or not, you know.
Absolutely. Well, it's like, I mean, it's like an AI generated video versus shooting it on a 35 millimeter Aria or whatever. Man, you know what I mean?
Man,
like,
don't get me started on fucking AI, man.
Yeah, and it's a super extreme. It's a super extreme analogy, but it's like, there is real value in like kind of the nuance and even some of the imperfections of live music. Yeah, you know, it's when I got chills at Thrice. What gave me chills was one of those moments where you could tell it was just like big buildup. All the instruments are getting louder because they're hitting them harder. Yep. And then Dustin, right at the end of that measure, yells into the mic just a big like woo, you know, and like it felt like a pressure release for everyone in the room, where it was like that collective tension of the guitars getting louder as they're building up, and then it goes into the not literal breakdown, but like you know, like goes into the next part of the song, and like there's so much value in those little nuances that, like you say, remind you you're in that agreement with the artist, you're experiencing it together.
I think a perfect example of good and bad, and this is like live music and crowd participation is a whole other topic that I'd like to discuss someday, but like I was listening to Chiodos the other day, and I was listening to All's Well That Ends Well, and I think it's There's No Penguins in Alaska, the one that starts off with dun 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 dun, right? And I don't know if they still do it, but at least back in the day, whenever they would play that right after the riff, the intro riff, and into the song, they would go woo, but of course they'd only do it live, right? And I'm driving along, I'm 36 years old, I have not seen Chiodos since Warped Tour 2014, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm sitting driving along after work, and I'm like, woo, you know? Like,
100%.
And it's one of those things, and so, you know, that's a good live moment that you don't have to have on the record, right? And then the reason I bring them up specifically is because and again, I'm sorry, Chiodos, if you need a photographer, hit me up. But
I don't know. The photos I saw from their last show look pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But like, I remember seeing people like people talking about like their when we were young set, and some people were like, oh my God, they've still got it. This is fantastic. And then other people were like, I don't think he was singing anything.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. And and they were like, yeah, all sounded like all of the guitar, like everything sounded too perfect, right?
Damn.
Yeah.
That makes me sad.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. Because I've seen that band in its many lineups, and they've always sounded great, and they've always sounded real, and they've always sounded raw.
Yeah.
And they're another one of those bands that, like, on record are so lush in their sound. A lot of strings, a lot of keys. Like, they had the keyboard thing, the keyboard core, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say they started it, but they helped popularize it in our day, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, every time I've seen them, they've been playing that shit, So, I don't know. And especially, like, with when we were young, like, I don't know. Like, you want I don't know how I'd feel, right? Because it's like the whole thing's predicated on nostalgia more than authenticity, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe you do want to go back and hear exactly how you heard it, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of nuance and a lot of just asterisks, I guess you can make to every point. But me
100%.
personally, like, no, I want the live experience. I want the best of the live experience. You know? Yeah.
Most definitely. So just to put a bow on that conversation, it sounds like we're both pro backing tracks.
Yes.
If they're supplementary, they are not obvious, and they don't remove us from the live experience.
Right. Yeah. And, like, if they're obvious in like I saw Protest Hero a couple months ago, and at some point I noticed, or I don't even think I noticed it before he addressed it, but Rhodey, their vocalist, brought up, he's like, hey, look, we wrote and recorded this album 10 years ago, right? And even then, I'd been in this band for a while. I don't have the voice that I had then. And so he was like, I won't be doing as much screaming as I could and as I did back in the day, because, I'm pushing whatever age. And it didn't take me out. They sounded great. They sounded live. And then if Rhodey wasn't screaming, cool. He's still hitting the other shit. He's still hitting these other notes,
Yeah.
And
so
it's
authenticity is still kind of
the
key indicator of, like, a good experience for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which comes back to your, millennial point.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I think we do crave that authenticity, and especially us as small town kids, like, playing backyard shows, seeing these big bands in tiny venues. We saw some pretty wild stuff where there was no filter. There wasn't even a barrier there wasn't even a stage at some of these places where we saw these bands.
Yep.
Yep. So
I don't remember who it was that we saw. It might have been the First Blood show, when someone set a fire out in front of Planters.
in Planter, yep.
Yeah.
Dude, the amount of disrespect that was done at shows to Ryan, I'm like, fuck. I'm like, it is no wonder this dude wanted to fight some fools. Like,
God, for real. I feel for him.
Yeah.
And it's like I understand that, like, because there is a balance. Like, I've seen like, before we finish this up, I will say I have seen some shit, right? Like, I have seen people that are, no backing tracks, amps on stage, all of the things that we've listed, and then they just can't keep their shit together, right? Oof. And like someone, either the whole band or just someone in the band is not, holding up not just their agreement with of quality with the audience, but, like, even like I've seen shows where the drummer is just looking at the vocalist or whoever, just like, what the hell are you doing, man?
Yikes. Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, that's memorable. Yeah, it's a genuine experience, but it's not great.
Yeah.
But also, backing tracks wouldn't have saved it.
Very true. If anything, maybe it would have made it worse, because it would have been like, I think it's worse to show, like, the Ashley Simpson SNL thing where they started playing the wrong song and it was obvious that it was all tracks.
Yep.
And so it's like, that is going to tarnish your reputation more than just a bad live show.
All right, so for the younger listeners, so Ashley Simpson is Jessica Simpson's sister. Jessica Simpson is currently the spokesperson of Chicken of the Sea Tuna. That might be the only way you know her.
You're lying.
No, she is. And
Wow.
because I don't know if you remember from their the Newlyweds show, there was a whole thing where she was like, I thought Chicken of the Sea was tuna.
That's right.
Yep.
Oh my, bro.
When I saw the commercial, I lost it. It was hilarious.
Wow. We are our fucking parents, because remember watching commercials growing up or seeing something and they'd be like, "Oh, this is so great." And you're like,
Yep.
"What?" You're like, "Whatever, boomer."
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, we're them. Holy shit. Well, fuck, now I need to see this commercial.
Yeah, if you can find, I'll try and send it to you. But yeah, that's so funny.
Love that.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, Michael,
Yeah.
think that was a perfect conversation.
Thanks.
Love having your perspective, and especially not just as an audio engineer, but yeah, as someone who's, like you said, you've seen some shit, we've seen some shit, you know, I mean, before we got on, you were talking about getting electrocuted by that mic that's in your hand.
Yep.
And that was what, 16, 17 years ago?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
One last point I do want to make. The photography. So another thing that I've gained in my experience of photography, right, is, and I remember it was specifically at a Fall of Troy show. I have a knife and I'm going to put that down.
Things got real violent.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It was at a Fall of Troy show. And I remember being in the photo pit, you know, just the photo pit between the stage and the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And I think I was 35 or something, not 34, 35, right? And I was sitting there and the crowd was going nuts, right? Because they were playing their first album, even the one before Doppelganger, right?
Oh,
And-
wow. Okay.
And so they're playing that one from start to finish. And then when they got to the original version of FCP, they were like, you know what, we're gonna play FCP remix. That's what you guys like, that one. We're gonna play that one, right?
Yeah.
And the crowd was going absolutely nuts, right? And I remember thinking, while I'm sitting there in the pit snapping pictures, I'm glad. I was like it's really funny that first off, I'm too old to be back there.
Yeah.
And so, but somehow in my quote unquote retirement, I am closer than I've ever been, right?
Yeah.
And so being a photographer, and like if I get media passes or, you know, guest list or something, like I have found a perspective where I'm even closer than I could have been, and that does kind of not taint things, but like I'm hearing a different perspective that I couldn't sometimes physically, right? Because sometimes I'm behind the front of house, and if you're only going straight to the front of house, I can't hear your guitars, right?
Yeah.
And it just feels empty. But yeah, and so it's like, no, bands, don't serve me, serve your audience, but I still feel like people should, in terms of the authenticity, shoot for that. Like, imagine your crowd is that one person, you know? Yeah.
It's a great way to put it, and I think that's advice for anyone creating, is just, you know, obviously create for yourself, but have a loose idea of what you're creating for.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Well, that was a great way to wrap it up.
Cool.
I think we have plenty of topics to cover after that conversation. There's a lot of stuff that I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, we could really expand on a lot of these topics. So
Do you want to talk an hour about the Chariot? I'll do that.
oh man, you know, we might need to do a Chariot deep dive from your perspective one day.
Oh,
and
God.
then I'll give my under oath sermon
Please.
about how this band is still criminally underrated.
Man, you will literally be preaching to the choir. Like
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I keep adding on. Continue.
No worries.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, good talking to you. I will
Talking to
see
you
you soon, and I'll probably have you back on the show soon. It's been a good time.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right. Bye.
See ya.